yet.
Okay, that sounds good. Do you want me to wait another minute or two, or do you want me to just get started at this point?
Sure, we can give them another minute or two. I'm not sure just how late they're running.
Okay, sounds good. My day has been going well so far. I am in finals right now, so I don't know when is morning or daytime or nighttime. It all just blends into the next day at this point. But as of next Wednesday, I will be done. So there is an end in sight.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It seems so far away, though. I know it's so close, but there's like so many things between me and that end. Hey, Caitlin, what do you think about us getting started just with some quick intros and maybe just kind of start at the beginning of the training component and see if people join in?
Yeah, I think that'd be perfect.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're being mindful of time because I think that this will probably take a little bit longer than an hour. So I want to hopefully get everyone's questions answered and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool. Do you have anything that you want to start with, or do you want me to just launch into it?
I don't have anything. These guys hear from me all the time, so they're probably excited that I won't be talking this afternoon.
Fabulous. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here and for being interested in talking about mentor recruitment. We're going to kind of walk through a few slides at the beginning here where I'll be doing a little bit of training, actually providing you with some frameworks and kind of approaches to set you up for success when you're developing and building recruitment campaigns. And then we will move into, Caitlin has provided all of those questions that you drafted after watching the webinar on mentor recruitment, particularly around the National Mentoring Month campaigns. And so I figured we could kind of dive into those questions then, and I could address those and any other questions that you have regarding the webinar or recruitment in general. And then we'll finish up by, for whomever is interested in sharing, having each of you talk a little bit about your ideas so far around what you're planning to do for January, and do a little feedback just based on kind of my knowledge and experience with recruitment about what could work, what you could push a little bit further, what you might want to consider that you might not have considered, and just get some actual tangible feedback for the work that you are currently doing. So does that sound good to everybody?
That's great. Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is just a little bit about me. I have been working as a consultant and trainer in mentoring and youth development for the last 3.5 years. I started out, I actually worked at Mentor Colorado as the training manager when they were founded and getting started for about the first 1.5 years. And then I've been working independently. I own my own company, Mentor Rise, at this point. I've been doing that for about the last 1.5 years while I've been in grad school. I've been working in youth development and mentoring for about 15 years at this point. I started in 2002 as a freshman in college, and I started mentoring a young man through a program in Washington, D.C., and really quickly realized that I loved it. And I loved this idea of relationships as kind of the catalyst and platform for growth and development. And it just made sense to me. So I have devoted my career to really exploring this concept and looking at how we can be more structured and strategic operationally so that we have a better ability as organizations to serve the young people that we're serving. As I said, I am in grad school, so that is where most of my time goes at this point. All right, so our agenda for today, as I said, just going to go over some targeted recruitment. So defining mentors, determining sources, marketing effectively to these individuals through these sources, and then taking thought into action. So how do we take all of these pieces and put them together into a strategic plan that's going to help us to get to our goals? Then we'll do webinar Q&A and then individual project feedback. So before I launch into this, what I would love is if we could just go around, and I don't know if you can see in the attendees section, everyone's kind of listed alphabetically. So what I was hoping is that you could just introduce yourself, where you are, so what site you are at or what organization you're working with, and then one thing that you're hoping to gain from this session today. So Allie, you're the first one listed. So if you wouldn't mind just getting us started and introducing yourself. If you are on the call. Oh, she's at the library. Okay, well, if you just want to type in where your site is, this just helps me to get a better understanding of location. I'd like to just be able to, Basalt Elementary. Okay, so you are in Basalt out by Aspen and Carbondale. Are you working with the Buddy program? Yes, okay, perfect. All right, great, thank you, Allie. And what is one thing you're hoping to gain from this session? If you just want to type that in, we will circle back to you and I'll make sure that we cover that. All right, Jordan, it looks like you might be in the same situation. If you don't have audio, if you could just type in the chat box what site you're looking. And Matt, you do have a little microphone next to you, so I'm going to have you introduce yourself if that's okay.
I'm happy to talk. Wait, am I going? Oh, why is it not? Oh, it's talking. Sorry. I'm at Strive Prep Ruby Hill in Denver, which is also where Max is. And then you just asked what we're
I
hoping
am
to
so
do.
sorry. Could you pause 1 second? I am having some technical difficulties here.
No problem.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing Matt, or is that just my audio?
I can hear him all right.
Okay. And I can hear you just fine. Matt, could you start again? I'm not exactly sure what went wrong, but...
Sure. I'll just try to talk loud.
Now you're
too.
perfect. No, it's totally fine
okay.
now.
Okay. Max and I are both at Strive Prep Ruby Hill.
Okay.
In Denver. And then it's just what we're hoping to get out of the session, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I am just hoping. One of the questions I had was just like a lot of the stuff we saw yesterday was about like what to do once you get volunteers, but I was kind of curious like how y'all have gone about like actually recruiting people. Like what do you talk about with them?
Okay. Okay, sounds good. And Max?
Yep.
Oh, this is Jordan. Sorry. Jordan?
Oh, no, I was trying to find a good time to interrupt. I just put my microphone on mute just in case I have a lot of feedback going on, but I can talk.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, Jordan. Where are you located?
I'm located in Steamboat, and I work at the middle school here. And also what I was hoping to get out today, and also one of my questions was, what is kind of the best advice you have for in-person and word-of-mouth events with minimal resources?
Okay. We will tackle that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, perfect. And then Max, I'm sorry.
No, you're
No,
fine.
I'm sorry,
No worries
Max.
at all.
So Max, what are you hoping to gain from this session?
All right, so the biggest thing that I'm hoping to get away from this session is that after watching that webinar and learning that recruitment is one of the biggest struggles or the biggest challenges amongst most agencies, I'm just interested in learning why it's such a challenge and what are some of the ways we can do to help break down this challenge and make it easier for other agencies.
Okay, awesome. Okay. And I will start there before we even launch into this. I'll talk a little bit about why this is a challenge. Okay. Anyone else who has microphone capabilities that wants to introduce themselves? Okay. And then Allie said that she's doing social media for Mentor Month, so anything to support that would be great. We will talk about all of these things. And just so that you guys know, as we are going through this, please don't feel like this is just a one-way kind of content delivery system to you. If you have questions, please feel free to ask throughout. I will keep this chat box open for Michaela and Allie so that if you guys have questions that you want to address, just feel free to type them in here and I'll read them out to the group. But you don't have to wait till a specific time to ask questions. If things come up as we're going, please feel free to kind of jump in and ask that question. And then also at the end, if there's anything that is still kind of left unspoken or that we haven't addressed, feel free to let me know and we'll make sure we get all of these things tackled, at least in the basic level. Some of these things might be a little bit more complicated, and so I would just ask at that point that we set up a time offline to talk more about the specifics, if that's the case. All right. So our first standard here, recruitment, is standard 1 in the elements of effective practice. So is everybody familiar with the elements of effective practice for mentoring? You guys have all checked this out? Okay. I'm going to take that as a yes. So standard one is recruitment. And this is really like the origin of the mentoring life cycle and why it's the first standard in all of this. So the actual standard is to recruit appropriate mentors by realistically describing your program's aims and expected outcomes. So we're going to look at how to define your mentors, how to find them, and then how to market to them are the three kind of steps we're going to look at. So to kind of circle back to Max's statement and question about why, like why is this one of the largest challenges that mentoring agencies face? It is obviously not a simple answer. There are a lot of complicated, kind of complex things that are compounded within this. So first of all, you have mentoring agencies that quite often are under-resourced, which you all know, you work in them. And unfortunately, recruitment tends to be one of the areas that they spend the least amount on. So while they might find people who are, well experienced and have robust skill sets for things like fundraising or program management, quite often recruitment is entry-level position with young people who are straight out of college and passionate, or who have been doing other roles and kind of get pushed into it. So recruitment is not necessarily what they are applying for the job for. It's just something that they end up getting layered onto a position. So it is a constant churn of people because what's being asked of these people in these roles is quite often beyond their actual skill set at that point. So people get burnt out. And every year you have a new recruitment person then. So there's very little traction, sustainability that can be created, and standardization goes out the window. So you have people who are constantly learning how to do recruitment over again and reinventing what's been done in the past. You also have managers who don't understand recruitment, don't understand it as a discipline. They think it's as simple as setting up a table and people are just going to want to run up to your table and talk to you about mentoring. So there's really unclear expectations about what actually goes into successful recruitment. And as a result, they don't set you up for success quite often. They ask you to do things beyond what you are capable of doing for various reasons. Again, resource allocation, training, all sorts of different things. So you have people who don't have the skills coming into it, and then you have managers who don't have the ability to provide the appropriate support or training to do the role. So that's kind of foundationally what we're dealing with. And then if you're constantly, creating new recruitment materials, right? Each of you is probably tasked with creating the vast majority of the marketing materials that you're going to utilize. So you become a salesperson, a marketer, a graphic designer, right? Like all of these different things. And all you wanted to do was work with kids. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
You guys facing that at this point? So it's kind of like as a structural position, it's not set up for success quite often. So
Are there any agencies that have like just one person or several people who are in charge of just recruiting for their agency? Is that a thing yet or no? Is that too expensive?
Do you mean in terms of, so are you asking if there's like a hub of people who recruit for other agencies, or if agencies
not necessarily a hub,
dedicated
but just
positions?
Just a dedicated position, like a recruiter
Yes.
for like a certain agency.
Yep. Yes. So there are definitely agencies that have dedicated recruitment positions. I mean, most of this comes with size. So, as an organization grows, they have then the capacity to have more, individualized roles.
Yeah.
But it's also there have been organizations that recognize the need, and that if they put in, the staff time at the beginning, then they'll have to do less in the end. Those are few and far between, but there definitely are. And so iMentor, I don't know if you guys are familiar with iMentor and all. It's based out of New York. They also have sites now in Chicago and in Texas. But they have multiple positions that their entire role is recruitment.
Oh, wow.
They have screening roles where all they do is do background screenings.
Yeah, that's awesome. But is there like research that shows somebody or an agency with a designated position of a recruiter, they tend to bring in more than agencies that don't?
Unfortunately, we don't have that sophisticated of research. Most of the research that's been conducted would be more anecdotal surveys. Nothing is, no research has been conducted that is, I guess, like a published research study. It's more through kind of anecdotal conversations with various agencies. So those agencies that have a dedicated position have a more strengthened process and an easier time recruiting people because the person is dedicated to that position and can strengthen their skill sets within it. So it definitely, it equates. So when there is dedicated staff time and when resources are put into recruitment, there is better recruitment results. Planning is, so to kind of take a step forward with this. So we recognize that we can't always have dedicated positions to this, that in some agencies, it'll be part of a person's role or part of multiple people's role. So the biggest thing with that and where the success comes in is in planning, is being super strategic about targeting the right person and then creating plans, timelines, and materials that will help to support that. So organizations that do well, despite the fact that they don't have dedicated positions, is because they're super, super regimented in planning and creating plans that they then execute. Organizations that tend to continue to struggle are those that just do things ad hoc. They see something, they think, okay, I'll try that. They do it. They don't really assess whether it worked or not. They don't make any revisions to their actions. They're just constantly jumping from one thing to the next thing to the next thing without ever assessing or analyzing the work that they've done or making adjustments to be able to recruit more effectively. So planning is the biggest thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to plan and kind of do each of these steps that are necessary for recruitment success. Okay? That's the big picture.
Awesome.
Structurally.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I will talk, when we get to the question, the Q&A part, I will talk about kind of why people aren't volunteering to become mentors. So like, what is the barrier to that? Because part of it is the staffing on the mentoring program side, but part of it is the person as well. And so why aren't people converting to mentors? Why is this not something they're just signing up for?
Okay.
All right, so we've got the kind of basics of the standard. So this first benchmark is to recruit mentors whose skills, motivations, and backgrounds best match the goals and structure of your program. So to do this, we're going to define our mentors. We have to figure out who we're recruiting. Okay, so how many of you have clearly defined mentors and can tell me? And what I'll ask actually, instead of how many of you, is does anybody, and would you be willing to share what your mentor profile is?
Like our own personal mentor profile, or a mentor we've
Like
had?
who you're recruiting. Like, who is the person that you are recruiting? What does that profile look like?
Well, I've got a rough draft in my head, but I haven't wrote anything down.
Do you want to tell me what the rough draft is?
Yeah, sure. So actually my group has been working on like the in-person recruiting side of things, and what we were talking about doing was like a 30-second pitch. So the people that in my own head who I envision pitching or having a conversation with and having it coming to fruition is somebody who's driven by their passions rather than somebody who's like super money motivated or wants to be in the corporate world, but really wants to make change, make a difference in their community and beyond. So looking more for people who are driven by a desire to make change and their passions. Somebody who's super motivated, who has been touched by a mentor themselves and knows how valuable a mentorship role is and wants to be able to bring that to others as well.
Okay, awesome. So I think that those are excellent characteristics to be looking for. And so this is, you don't have to answer this question, but my next question would be, how do you identify those things? what would be the indicators to you? So we have to take, and this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about defining your mentor profile, but once you have to figure out who you're looking for, and then what are those indicators? Where would you find that? How do you see those different characteristics? Because this is what your role as a recruiter is, to identify who your right fit mentor is, and then tailor all of your recruitment efforts to that person, right? So we find where they are. Right? Yeah. How do we see these indicators? What messaging is going to resonate with them?
Yeah.
So defining your mentors. Okay. So what I'm going to ask each of you to do, we're not going to go through this today, but you're going to have access to these slides after the fact. But starting out, to define your mentors, you have to figure out what is the commitment that you're asking of them. Clearly define this in every single element of this. One of the huge issues that we have in recruitment is that we do not set clear expectations about what the commitment looks like. Okay, so define the commitment, define your expectations for the mentor, for the mentee, for the mentoring relationship. What is the eligibility? Okay, and so eligibility is different than desired characteristics. These are baseline things that someone has to have to even be considered for the program. Okay, so this might be age, it might be education, it might be criminally related, right? That they don't have any felonies, or that they don't have any, crimes against children, right? That gets defined by you. There is not a rule book that we follow in terms of criminal activity and what is defined. There's not a rule book in terms of ages, right? So for your program, it might be 18 or older. For a program that I used to manage, it was 21 and older. So what do they have to have in place to even be considered? And then the last part of this is defining the characteristics. So, and I'm sorry, I don't know who was talking last, but if it was Matt or Max, but you were saying that you were looking for these more characteristic-based things, right? So passions, wants to make a difference, motivated, understands the value of mentoring. So those would be these ideal characteristics that you're looking for. So it's not something that has to be in place to consider them, but this is the profile that we're looking for that would take that person to the next level. So those would be the characteristics.
Okay.
So does anybody have questions about kind of these four components and what you're defining within this?
I guess I was just wondering, are you going to go into further detail about some of these?
I was not going to, but I can. So if you have specific questions or questions about what they are, I'd say this is definitely the time to talk about it.
Okay. Then I was wondering, with commitment, what would be your best advice on what we should say regarding those lines? Do you go ahead and mention it to people who are interested in the program, or that's something you're just filling out yourself to see if you think they would be a good fit?
Both. So my recommendation is to be super clear about commitment, expectations, and eligibility from day one. So you want to put these things on your marketing collateral. They should be visible on your website, in email exchanges with them, whatever the communication is, because you want people to determine whether or not that fits into their lifestyle and aligns with what they can do. So you want to set those expectations up front so they can either say, yep, this fits for me, or no, this doesn't, and it's time to move on.
Okay. And I guess I kind of have a personal question, and Caitlin might be able to answer this question too. My program also has part-time mentors that are not AmeriCorps, and they also have community-based mentors. Is it too broad to try to, I guess, tailor my presentation to all of that audience, or should I really just focus on one?
So Jordan, I would say not focusing on the part-time members, because that's a paid position. So that's going to be a little bit different than what we're talking about here, which is more the volunteer mentor.
Okay.
But I think overall you're looking for mentors. So the community or school model, you're usually working with students of a similar age. So the type of mentor you're looking for would probably have a lot of overlap. Audrey, I don't know if you have any input there as well.
Yeah, I would actually say to define this for every single one of those separate positions, any that you would be recruiting for. So if you are recruiting for the paid mentoring model, I would do the same thing for this, for that specific model. Like I would define who your mentor is for each of those different program models. One of the biggest challenges that we have in recruitment is that we do very broad recruitment. We cast our net super wide with the hope that someone will get caught. But as a result, what ends up happening is that we don't speak to anybody because it's just this really broad messaging. So the more refined you can get at who is the best fit for each of these separate roles, the better. Now you can talk really broadly about what mentoring is with, I'm sorry, were you at the Buddy program? No, you're at Steamboat.
Yeah.
So you can talk really broadly about what mentoring is conceptually and what it looks like at your organization. But I would kind of drill down and create separate, smaller pitches for each of these things. And that would be something that as you're kind of talking to someone, if you're having a one-on-one conversation with them, you would start to tease out from your questions of them and from their kind of, what their interests are, which model might be best. But if you're doing kind of a broader pitch, I would pitch largely about what mentoring is. And then here are the different options we have for you so that you can just determine what will best fit with your schedule and your interests.
Okay. I feel like that's something I just need to be cautious of when I'm describing our program. But thank you. Yeah, cautious.
Sorry, talk to me about the cautious.
Just because I feel like our agency is known throughout our town, so I just want to make sure that I'm representing it properly.
Oh, sure.
I think that's why that question stemmed in my mind.
Yes. Well, and what I can do is I can send you an example of kind of like if I can find it. Actually, I used to, when I managed a mentoring program, and we had 4 different program models that we operated. And so when we would do different like corporate pitches, for instance, we would kind of talk broadly about the organization and what it meant to volunteer with the organization, and then provide information about the different options that were available to them.
Okay.
So I can see if I can find that overview to provide to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Other questions about this slide? If there are any of these things that aren't well defined for you that you want to talk about after the fact, please let me know. Eligibility, I know, is a challenge for a lot of people because there's just a question about, what are the parameters for criminal behavior, or what would be a disqualifier. So let me know if you guys want to talk about that in more detail, or if you do have questions, if that's not super well defined for your program. Okay. So to help you to create your mentor profiles, I've just kind of created a slide that gives you an idea of the types of information you want to be thinking about and brainstorming. And you can do this alone. You can find someone else in your organization to do this with. I would recommend bouncing ideas off of someone else. That doesn't mean that you have to change your ideas or come to a consensus. But I think it can be helpful to kind of talk through this with someone, because there are always things that will come up that someone else thinks of that you did that could translate to your profile. But you want to be thinking about what knowledge they have, what skills you want them to have, what they value, and then what experience or what they have in their background. And then, so that's more of the psychographic information, and then demographic information, you're looking for what, what their age is. You might have some interest in having people that are culturally representative of the young people that you're serving. So that would be something that you would want to identify. And then think about, what are their interests? What are they doing in their free time? Where do they work? What kinds of careers do they have? And then also, where are they getting their news and information? So my recommendation is to develop a profile or multiple profiles for the people that you are seeking. And the more detailed you get, the more narrowly you focus your profiles, the easier it is to then recruit that person, that specific person. So I recommend not having age ranges that are more than 5 years. So doing like 30 to 35, 28 to 33, something like that. But once you get outside of that 5-year spectrum, you can start to get into different generations and different kind of people who access information differently or who have different interests. And then also, again, just don't do it too broadly because it's more difficult to recruit. So quite often people will have anywhere from 2 to 5 mentor profiles that they're recruiting at any given time. The other thing is you don't have to be actively recruiting each of those mentor profiles at any time. Okay, questions about creating mentor profiles. Okay. So after you define who your mentors are, the next thing is to determine the sources. So where are you actually going to recruit these people? Now that you know who you want to recruit, where do you recruit them? So the 2 benchmarks around this and the elements of effective practice are using multiple strategies to recruit mentors. So direct ask, social media, traditional methods of mass communication, presentations, word of mouth referrals, but using multiple sources, not just one, on an ongoing basis. An ongoing basis is an important factor in this as well. We don't want this to be episodic or to shut down recruitment. It's kind of a ongoing process that you'll be engaging in with recruitment. And then encouraging mentors to assist with recruitment efforts by providing them with resources to ask people in their networks who meet eligibility criteria. Okay, so you've defined your mentors, so now you need to think about where you can find them. Where are they getting their information? So you want to think about where they work, what social media sites they're on, how they're communicating with people, what they do in their free time. You want to think about all these different aspects. So instead of just saying social media, right, maybe they get their information from social media, really drill down and think about where is this specific person getting their information on social media. So I'm just going to pick a random profile just to kind of give you an example. So let's say right here in Colorado, 25-year-old, I'm looking for 25 to 30-year-old females who are, really into the outdoors. They are into, kind of caretaking careers. So maybe they're teachers or nurses, social workers, but they really understand those kind of relational skills. So what social media platform maybe would I be able to find this person on? What would they be using? Anybody have any ideas?
I feel like Facebook probably being the largest one.
Facebook is definitely one. What else? There's another big one. LinkedIn, yep. One more.
I would say Twitter.
Instagram, actually. Instagram would be my other one. And I also want you to think about what platforms allow you to demonstrate mentoring the best. So I'd say in terms of social media, Facebook and Instagram are going to be probably your 2 best vehicles for helping people to visualize and understand what mentoring is. LinkedIn will be one of your best kind of vehicles for accessing young professionals who might be interested in utilizing mentoring as a tool for their own professional development or their own development. But those three, just about everyone's going to be on. And then Allie, I see you also put Reddit. Reddit is actually a super cool idea for recruitment. And for those people who are on Reddit, it can be extremely successful. But the key to Reddit is that you have to be kind of ingrained within the social network of it. It can't just be kind of like me randomly going on there and posting it. It's much more powerful when someone is actively involved in that network, as is true with all social media. But my recommendation and focus would be Facebook and Instagram as your primary platforms for content creation and for pushing out kind of images and messaging around volunteering and becoming a volunteer mentor, because they're able to visualize what it looks like. There's a little bit more content that can be posted on Facebook with information, about what the commitment and that kind of stuff. That can be included. But I do think LinkedIn is just not a very well used platform, but I kind of think that it's a big open space for volunteer recruitment as a result. LinkedIn just launched their volunteer component, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, maybe even just been a year ago. But they did it in conjunction with Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. So it's set up for mentoring agencies to have success on it, but it's still a very underutilized platform. So you wouldn't be competing with other people in that space. Okay, so thinking about kind of your profiles, think through and write out each of these, right? So write, where are they spending their time during the day? Where do they work? Where are they spending their time activity-wise? If they are, mountain biking, where are they buying their gear? What stores do they go to in your town? If they're into yoga, where are they practicing yoga, right? Just think about not only what they do, but where you can actually find them. If they're a nurse, what are the, places in your town where they could be a nurse? Take it to the level of the actual location that you would find them. And then for each of these news sources, think about, the social media platforms that would best, meet their needs, or the listservs and message boards, that they might be looking at on a regular basis. If they're using traditional mass communication, right? So depending on the town you're in, some people might use traditional mass communication. Maybe they do read the local newspaper. Every town is a little bit different in terms of how they're communicating and what is popular within that. In Denver, traditional mass communication might not be the best option, right? Social media might be a better platform for campaigns. Okay. So any questions about how to figure out where your mentors are based on those mentor profiles? Okay. And obviously this is just kind of a quick overview of things. So I know we're not getting fully into it, but if you do have questions, let me know. Okay, so the third objective, so we've defined our mentors, we've figured out where to find them. The third thing is marketing to them effectively, right? So creating messages and marketing collateral that is actually going to reach them, that is going to resonate with them, that they'll read it or they'll see it and they'll say, that's me. I want to be a part of this. So the benchmarks are, again, realistically portraying benefits, practices, supports, and challenges of programs. So this is ensuring that how you're messaging and the visuals that you're using accurately demonstrate what mentoring will look like in your program. That you're building positive attitudes and emotions about mentoring. Again, this is through the messaging and the visuals that you would be using. And then the enhancement is providing a written statement outlining the eligibility requirements for mentors so that they can self-assess and determine whether or not it's the right fit for them. So we're going to look at two different statements that are messages that could be used to recruit a mentor. So the first one, become a volunteer. What do you guys think about this? Who do you think this reaches? Who am I talking to with this message? Any ideas?
I feel like maybe a younger crowd and also an unemployed crowd.
Okay.
Of my own situation.
Yeah, no, it's good. So who would read this and say, this is about me? They're talking to me. So we have a younger, maybe an unemployed crowd. Anybody else we think that this would reach? Okay. So I agree that those are definitely people that it could reach. As a whole, become a volunteer speaks to people who want to become a volunteer and already know it. Because you're saying become a volunteer. So if I don't already think I could want to become a volunteer, when I read this isn't message to me. You guys see that? Okay. So now let's look at the next one. Who does this speak to?
I like that. I want to go on an adventure. Allie.
Allie thinks it speaks to you as well.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Who does this reach? What is the demographic that this resonates with? Or the psychographic?
Towards like the younger millennial generation, where the travelers and just the people who want to get out and explore and not want to sit around and collect a paycheck all day.
Exactly, right? So it talks to the millennials, entrepreneurial spirit, people who are interested in getting out and exploring and experiencing, travelers, people who live in Colorado, right?
Yeah.
This speaks to people because it's action oriented in a way that resonates. It helps people to envision what they want to become or what they want to do, who they want to be. And it also doesn't specifically focus on volunteering. We don't know what the adventure is, but it piques our interest. It engages people. So by saying become a volunteer, we're only targeting people who are already considering becoming a volunteer. And we're not targeting their emotions. When we say something like start an adventure, we target a much broader range of people who could be a good volunteer, but maybe haven't identified it yet. And we speak to their emotions. Okay? You guys see the difference in those two?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely piqued my interest a lot more than become a volunteer.
Yes. So I want you to be thinking about that, right? So when you're thinking about messaging to your audience, right, to your profile that you have determined is going to be who you're looking for, what's going to resonate with them? So I started when I was managing a program in Washington, D.C. I managed a program there for 5 years. And we embarked upon this kind of pretty big male recruitment campaign. And that was a question that I saw on my question list of why is it harder to recruit men? We will tackle that. But so I started this male recruitment campaign, and we really looked at the messaging and how we were targeting people. And I, had crafted this really nice recruitment message. And all I was recruiting was women, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was. And so I had my brother read the message that I had written. And he laughed at me and was like, asked where Sarah McLachlan was and if there were puppies dying in the corner. Because he said he's like, it's just too serious. Like, this isn't interesting to me. I think it's, it just doesn't resonate with me. So I asked him what would make him interested in mentoring. And he was like, honestly, he's like, do you want a little dude to think you're the shit?
Yeah.
That's what he said to me. And to him, that was what was cool. He wanted to be a cool older brother or a cool big brother for a little kid. He didn't want to hear about how difficult their lives were or the huge transformational difference he was going to make. Because to him, that was scary. He didn't want to transform someone's life. He just wanted to hang out and play basketball with the little kid. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to have fun. So think about who you are targeting and what is going to be the most impactful for them. What's going to make them want to become a mentor? Not any of these big picture things that we've talked about and all of the really serious reasons why. We know those, but we don't have to message them. That doesn't have to be what's compelling to other people. So we have to figure out how to change our message for specific audiences and who we're trying to reach. Okay, so messaging and marketing, developing the right materials. So it needs to be targeted, right? So you're trying to recruit the right people. It needs to hook them. So using images, phrases, colors, formatting that's going to resonate with them, that's going to be appealing to them. One of the things with this, one of the things that's really important is those images need to be them. If you're trying to recruit a 25-year-old male, you need to have pictures of 25-year-old male. You're trying to recruit a 35-year-old woman, you need to have a picture of a 35-year-old woman. They need to see themselves in these pictures. And they need to see themselves having fun, right? It needs to be an enjoyable experience. And also, whenever we can do it, doing activities that are actually mentoring related activities or the types of activities we would want them doing, it helps to demystify what mentoring looks like. And that is particularly important for men. They need to see what they're going to be doing. Otherwise, it's this big, ambiguous, amorphic thing. And that's the scary part. That's where fear resides, is in the unknown. So help them to know what it looks like. Language, think about value and impact in the choice of your words. Again, making sure that the language is one that resonates most with the audience. And this is something too that we see sometimes, and I saw in the webinar, there was kind of commentary on utilizing the word mentor, meeting people where they are. If mentor is a word that turns people off, use different language. Figure out different ways of helping them to understand the role and what they'll be doing without using a term that's going to put up a barrier unnecessarily. So if someone's resistant to the term mentor, and you see that very quickly, adjust. Figure out different ways to explain who that person is in that role. Because everybody comes in with a different knowledge base of what a mentor is and different baggage. For some people, a mentor is something awesome and easily accessible. For some, it is like a surrogate parent. And that is a very challenging thing to try to sell to someone as a volunteer role. Include the purpose, benefits, how it works, and characteristics that you are looking for. Again, you'll have the eligibility requirements, but you also want people to understand if they fit into the box of your ideal candidate. So if I see that you're looking for someone who's passionate and adventurous, I'm going to know whether or not I fit that criteria. But if you don't say that that's what you're looking for, it's very difficult for me to determine whether or not it's the right fit for me. And then tell them what you want. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to become a mentor? Do you want them to sign up for an info session? Do you want them to submit an application? Tell them what you want them to do. Don't think that because you've created this, what seems like a very clear message through your marketing, that they know what the next step is. We always have to make that directive final ask to tell them what action we want them to take. Okay, any questions on messaging and marketing? Okay, so taking thoughts to action. So we've defined our mentor, right? So we figured out who they are, where we're going to go get them, what avenues, and then the messaging. Okay, so then the next two steps to pull it all together are you need to create the marketing collateral, right? Those different materials that you're going to use. So the specific messages that can get posted to listservs, flyers that can be distributed electronically, and if you want to do it in hard copy as well, email templates, social media buttons and pictures, right? So create all of the materials so that all you have to do is execute and launch and send them out, rather than having to draft them every single time. And then the last step in pulling it all together is creating very specific plans to determine your goal, create timelines, and action items that correspond with all of this, so that you know whether or not you've achieved it. Tracking for those goals or those timelines, make adjustments. But this way you'll be able to execute successfully because you'll have all of the different resources and tools that you need to be able to do so. Any questions on pulling it all together?
Not for me.
Okay. All right. So the last thing that I have for you as a tool is to think through the campaign that you're launching and to actually do a mini assessment on this. So this would be, think about what is the actual activity, and you can do this for a couple different runs, right? So if you're toying around with some different ideas of what your campaign is going to be or what your activity is going to be, assess all of them. So define the activity, brainstorm and think about what is the cost. And this is financial cost, as well as resources from the organization, as well as your staff time. Because your time is one of the biggest costs that you will endure in recruitment. And quite often we forget about that. But not only is it your time that's being then kind of distracted from other activities, but it's also the cost of your time, right? And if they have you working on this, you're not working on something else. So think about all of that, all of the different resources that go into it. Think about the pain. So what is going to be particularly challenging about this activity? What will be painful or difficult? What is outside of the realm of what you have in place, right? So maybe it's that it's going to take extra staff time, or maybe it takes resources beyond what you have. Maybe it's outside of your skill set. But just think about what the pain is going to be, and then what could you potentially gain from the experience as well. So do this assessment of any of the activities that you're planning to embark on to determine whether or not the gain is going to balance or be balanced with that cost and pain, right? So like, are you actually going to get enough from this experience? What is the outcome going to be? What is the return on your investment here? All right, any questions on assessing your activities? Okay. All right, so let's roll into your questions that you have from the webinar. So Caitlin kind of collected these for me, and so what I was going to do was just go through each one and answer them, and then if you have kind of further thoughts or follow-up questions as a result of that, you can ask them as well. Does that work for everyone?
Works for me.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. All right. Question 1. Recruitment of mentors is one of the biggest challenges among agencies. I'm curious as to whether or not there's been any research into why more people don't want to step into the mentorship role. So we talked about kind of the, like, on the program side, on the organization side, why it's a struggle to recruit people. So this is from the mentor side of things. So why aren't people stepping into this role? So I'd say first, it's about ignorance and exposure, right? So ignorance and lack of exposure. They don't know that the positions are out there, the volunteering opportunities are out there. And if they don't know about it, they don't sign up for it. Most people are not actively seeking volunteer opportunities. Most volunteer opportunities that people engage in land on their lap in one way or another. A friend recommends it, someone does a presentation at their organization, an email comes across, at a time when they're like, oh, this is something I could do. But so that's a lot of it, is just not being exposed to it, not knowing what exists, and not having the time to go out and look for those opportunities themselves. The other thing comes along with ignorance about what mentoring is. So if they think mentoring is becoming a parent, or if they think it's, being the kid's best friend, or whatever other kind of really big scale ideas they have, that can be a deterrent quickly. And I'm going to be super honest about this. We as mentoring agencies have created that challenge. We are the reason that people think mentoring is this huge, huge, big undertaking. Because when we tell people things like, become a mentor, change 2 lives, what do we think that they're going to think? They're going to think their role is changing someone's life. Right? So we as mentoring agencies have sold ourselves, or have created a situation where we put ourselves into this corner because we tell people that this is going to be a life-changing experience. And then we deal with the repercussions of that being too immense and it being too much for someone. So we have to be very mindful of our messaging and not creating this super, super huge, big idea of what mentoring is as well. So with our new messaging that we're going to be creating, that's going to be more fun and adventurous and help them to see the benefit to them as well, we can help to kind of align them to what it really looks like in mentoring. So the next thing I'd say, beyond ignorance and exposure of what a barrier is to people becoming mentors, is alignment. So it's a big ask, and they want to know what's the reward and how does it fit into their life. So we need to help them to see how it aligns. So one of the things that I used to do when I was recruiting mentors, men in particular, I would ask them what they were up to this weekend. So the first thing that, I would talk to them a little bit about mentoring, and then they tell me they didn't have the time. And I was like, okay, cool. So what are you doing this weekend? And they kind of go through it. Well, tomorrow morning I'm going to the grocery store, and then I'm going to head to the gym after that. Going to play a pickup game, basketball with my boys on Sunday, and then probably, go out to dinner or something like that, or go and get a bite to eat. And then I would then explain how they could have a mentee doing all of those things with them. Oh, you're going to go to the grocery store? That's a great opportunity to take your mentee and to talk about adult living and planning and healthy eating and healthy lifestyles and budgeting, right? All you have to do is walk around the grocery store with them, and you can do all of those things. Or you can just talk about your life and what's going on in their lives. You're going to go to the gym? You can take your mentee to the gym. You can work out with your mentee. You're going to play a pickup game of basketball? Great. Your mentee can do that with you. So you help them to understand that they don't have to do anything outside of the spectrum of their normal life. They can fit the mentee into each of those kind of activities intentionally. So it's helping them to see how it aligns. And then also, what are their goals? What are they trying to achieve? And helping them to see how mentoring aligns with that. It helps with leadership development, managerial skills, communication, problem solving, time management, right? So helping them to see the benefit to them beyond just it'll make you feel good. Because people know that volunteering will make them feel good, and that's not getting them hooked at this point. So we have to help to kind of move beyond that, to think about how is this going to help their life? How is this going to help them in other aspects of their life? Then the last thing is just unclear expectations. When we seem super wishy-washy about what the commitment is and what we're asking of them, they are less likely to become involved. When we set very clearly defined expectations and commitments and eligibility requirements, people can say, yes, that fits, or no, it doesn't. But the unknown is where people get lost. Okay. Any further questions on that, or should I roll into the next one?
Keep it rolling.
Digital marketing and mentoring agencies are focused heavily on men. Why are men less likely to be a mentor? Okay, so alignment, again, is part of this. So time is definitely an element. I don't have enough time. I'm busy working on other things. There's an individual focus that is has been allotted by society to men, where they're able to be more focused individually on their careers for a longer period of time than women. So men will say they don't have the time, or they're focusing on their careers, or they're not ready to mentor. And this kind of all flows into this like maturity, and then also just how society has kind of set them up. So that is a big part of that, is just helping them to see how it fits with their lifestyle, and that they are ready for it, that they don't have to, achieve anything specific in their careers or reach a certain point to be able to, provide support to a young person or help them to think through their goals and their next step, to be a caring adult in their life. Other reason is the type of role and the stigma attached to it. So mentoring is looked at as a nurturing caregiver type role. And so women just tend to volunteer for those roles more frequently. Again, I think a lot of it is based on society and where they kind of place, women or men and what they should be doing volunteer-wise as well. And then also because it can seem too immense, right? Like if we're telling them they're going to change someone's life, that can seem like too much of a commitment or too much that they're taking on. And then the other thing is because we have existing networks of females in mentoring organizations, and those people recruit more females. So whoever we have in an organization is who we're going to recruit. If you are a female doing recruitment, you're going to tend to recruit more females. Guys, you will actually have an easier job recruiting more males because of your existing networks, because of your existing networks of men who then can recruit more men. If you have predominantly female mentors, you're going to recruit predominantly female mentors just because of existing networks and what people are able to tap into. So unfortunately, we have to kind of, be super, super intentional about recruiting men as a result of that. There's an entire toolkit online for recruiting men through Mentor Michigan. It's called the Male Recruitment Toolkit. It gives all sorts of talking points and kind of background information on why it can be more challenging to recruit men, and then also how to recruit different kind of subsets of men. So how to recruit young men, how to recruit a man if you're a woman, how to recruit older men. I mean, it just kind of goes through the different focuses and the key talking points and what will resonate most with them.
Wow. So Audrey, this was actually my question, and I think I've been doing a lot of work with just masculinity, American masculinity, and how unhealthy I feel it is in its current standpoint. Yeah. And one thing that I hadn't come across until I watched this webinar was that I didn't realize there was a problem with getting men as mentors, and that was really kind of shocking for me, because I know now more than ever, like young men especially, really need a strong male role model or mentor in their life. Yes. The caseload I have is 9 of the 10 students on my caseload are young men. So it was just really shocking to me to see that there was a lack of men applying for a mentor role. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I think you're right in that a lot of it does have to do with how society has portrayed us to be this self-sufficient individual who's so heavily focused on his career and his life goals that we're not supposed to need the extra nurturing or care.
Yep, absolutely. And there's this idea of once you accomplish something, then you give back. And I don't know like how that happened exactly, but I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had with men where that is kind of the message is like, yeah, I absolutely do when I have accomplished this. I would love to be a mentor once I've reached this point.
Now, do you find you get that response
there's an idea of like
older men, or is it more of a millennial age group that you're hearing that response?
Millennial age group thing. The
Really?
older men are already, it's for the older men, it's either they're already there and they recognize that, I've accomplished enough and now I can mentor, or they're self-selecting out for other reasons.
Wow.
And it might just be, a maturity thing. Or, I've also had conversations with men that are like, yeah, no, I wouldn't be a good mentor. I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know. You probably wouldn't be a good mentor. But yeah, so we recruit 3 females for every male in mentoring. It's 3 to 1.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yes. And that's why there's been this huge push through the National Mentoring Partnership in working with NBA and with various sports teams to try to kind of leverage their visibility with male communities and try to utilize that as a way of making mentoring cool and helping them to understand why this is a imperative thing for them to be doing, and not just once they've reached a certain point or if it seems to fit in, but more of a necessity for the male gender, and helping to ensure that subsequent generations have kind of a better framework or training in masculinity, and helping to kind of carry the torch. I feel that it's easier and not easier, but it's easier. That message resonates more in the Black community than I think it does in, not that there's a white community, but in white kind of settings. There is more of a recognition of, at least in communities that I've worked in, of developing the next generation of young men in communities of color more so than in, but that's, again, just anecdotally from experience. It's unfortunate though, but this is where I think that we just have to get super sophisticated in our messaging and how we're talking about mentoring, so that we're not shutting people down, and that we're actually drawing people into what the experience is and the activities that will be a part of mentoring, versus just the stigma of nurturing or being a parent or something of that nature, if they have those kind of negative connotations associated with it.
Right.
Okay. All right. So the next question. What is our exact group we're trying to target, and what sort of media do they access the most? So I'd say that who you're targeting is going to be determined by your program. The primary things of who you're looking for is someone who can develop a healthy relationship with a young person, someone who can support the youth in their journey, and someone who's able to fulfill the commitment of the mentoring relationship. Those are kind of the primary things. But beyond that, in terms of like demographics, that's really going to be up to you and who you're targeting. I'd say a sweet spot for a lot of areas, particularly urban areas, is going to be anywhere from like 25 to 35-year-olds. But that differs in some of our mountain communities that might rely on a local college, or a retired community, or, different kind of subsets within your specific community. But those 3 things, developing a healthy relationship with the young person, supporting the young person on their journey, and fulfilling the commitment are kind of my primary criterion that I'm looking for when I'm looking for mentors. And then we talked about the social media that they access. But honestly, regardless of social media platforms or anything like that, word of mouth is the best recruitment tool. So setting people up, your mentors or your friends or whomever else you want to help you to recruit, with the different tools. So like if you want them to post something on Facebook, giving them the post that you want them to repost so that they don't have to create it. And just giving them all of those materials to do it, so that all they're doing is executing and you're doing all of the actual kind of thought development and work of developing the materials. Okay, social media. What social media portal is the best to get people involved and see the big picture. Again, I'm going to say Facebook and Instagram for this, with LinkedIn as the kind of outlier that I think would be super cool if someone tried to explore that, because we just don't have mentoring programs that are using it very much. And I think that, most young professionals, most professionals are on LinkedIn at this point. So it is an interesting source, but Facebook and Instagram. Are there past strategies to show MC can encourage our partner organizations to really step up in this intense month of recruitment and experience sharing? So past strategies are planning, again, creating a very specific plan and articulating this. I think that, people just struggle to take thought to action and to actually execute. So whenever you create a plan for someone, it's really helpful. Giving them the tools for success. So those marketing materials, templates, social media icons. And then the other thing is training people how to speak about mentoring. I think this is a huge challenge for people in understanding how to talk about mentoring. And that is one of the problems when we ask our mentors or existing mentors or volunteers to do recruitment themselves. They don't want to do a bad job, and they don't want to speak incorrectly about the organization. So I think it was Jordan, you had mentioned earlier that, you were cautious about wanting to ensure that what you were messaging about your organization was appropriate. That's the same way your mentors feel or your volunteers feel. And so when we train people on how to speak about mentoring, these are the primary talking points. These are the major ideas we want to accomplish. These are the things we want to avoid. It helps people to feel confident and then more willing to do it. Now, they may have had the exact same conversations with or without that training, but the confidence is the key. It gives them the ability to feel like they have a better understanding of what they should be talking about, so they're more willing to do it. Okay. So this next question I actually need some clarification on. So the question is, what is the best way to share your experience and keep confidentiality? And so I was wondering if whomever wrote this question could provide just a little bit more context so I can make sure I'm addressing the question appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. And this might be a question too that our agencies can answer. But if you are sharing experience about, I guess, one of your students now for a personal story, do you ask them to say something? Like, what's the best verbiage when you're talking word of mouth with someone about it? And kind of along those lines.
Yeah, so that is a great question. So I think that whenever possible, when talking about current students, that they will not be, are you talking about someone that like is an anecdotal story to say like this is a success story, or like it's a potential mentor and you already have a mentee in mind that you'd like them to, to talk to them about, as like, this kid is perfect for you and I'd love for you to become a mentor so that we could potentially match you with this kid? Which one are you asking about?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going that far, but just because I haven't worked with my students long enough. But if I wanted to share what me and a student were doing and how we had like success in that activity or something like that.
I would just say I'm working with a student. So just don't mention their name. If you're talking to like a mentor specifically about that young person and their experiences. If it's your mentee, so like I have a mentee, for instance, so I will mention her by name, but I won't talk about her with, people that would be directly connected to her. And if I am, then I'm just not going to use her name. So I'd say my mentee or a young person that I'm working with. I think a young person that I'm working with is a pretty easy way to just kind of blanket it, and then you don't get into the details of, confidentiality issues. We just don't want to bring in any personally identifying things that a mentor or a potential mentor in your program would be able to identify who that student is. So just talk as broadly as possible and don't use names.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, the confidentiality thing is important, and especially if we're talking about like so there are situations, and for some mentoring agencies that I've worked with, they identify, like they'll have a mentee or a young person that's enrolled in their program, and then they recruit for that young person. So they'll actually be, talking to people with a mentee in mind. And so in that situation, they don't say the young person's name or specifically where they go to school, but just really broadly talk about some of the challenges the young person is experiencing to be able to determine whether or not the mentor has the capacity to support those particular needs or those particular challenges. But I do think it's super important to share your experiences. So again, in terms of like helping people to visualize and demystify what mentoring looks like, the more real experiences and things that we can talk about, the more they start to feel like they can wrap their head around what that looks like. So you do definitely want to share those stories. Okay, next question. What advice do you have for mentor promotion events with limited resources? So set really specific goals. And then also think about what you can spend money on and where you should cut corners. So like what would be the things that are necessities to spend money on and what are the things that are not as necessary. But set super clear goals, negotiate. So for instance, if you're doing an event and you want to do it at a restaurant, call a bunch of different restaurants. Find out who's willing to offer you what and recognize that you're bringing something in as well. So like if you're doing a mixer at a bar, you're bringing in business. So what are they going to give to you for bringing in that business? I never paid for event space when I was hosting different events. I would just go to different venues and ask that, say, we're going to spend this much money. What can you provide for me? What are you willing to give to me for this? Or, we're a nonprofit. We're interested in hosting a small dollar fundraiser event. People will be donating money. Can you give them drink specials if they donate the money? Will you extend your happy hour specials? Can we have this dedicated space? But negotiate with them. And if they say it costs this much, say thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go check out some other places. And then the other thing is use your networks. So really look at who are your existing mentors and what do they have access to, right? So maybe they have conference room spaces. Maybe they can help to host an event at, their office. Maybe they know someone at the local restaurant that would be willing to help out, but really use your networks to leverage what those relationships are and help to gain some things through them as well. Maybe they can connect you with, someone else that can help you with marketing or anyway, just use your networks. And then the other thing is, if you guys, do you use Canva? Anybody use Canva? Okay, so Canva is another thing that I recommend. It's like an online platform that has all of these pre-designed templates that you can use to create social media buttons, PowerPoint slides, flyers, all sorts of different things. They have a free option. You can also pay for designs. They're not super expensive if you do pay for the designs. It's like $1 here and there, but they also do have free ones. But my recommendation in terms of like what you spend your money on is I would definitely recommend you, spend money on these kinds of pre-developed templates when possible. It will save you a lot of time. And then also pictures. Don't pull pictures off of Google. Find like an actual source. So 123RF is what I use. It's my favorite because you can kind of purchase at different levels and you can spend $1 to $7 on a picture depending on the quality that you want and how refined. But there are a bunch of different, websites that you can purchase pictures off of, and they cost, a couple dollars. I'll spend like $3 or $4 on a picture from 123RF, and then I have this beautiful picture that resonates with people versus, a pixelated picture that's got slash marks going through it or something that isn't quite the right fit. It's an area that we skimp on in nonprofits all the time. We do not spend money on our pictures, and I think it's a huge shortcoming because they're not that expensive, and it makes all the difference in the world. So that is definitely where I would spend my money to help to ease your marketing efforts overall. Okay. What are good types of photos to share? Okay, so that, again, buy them. Either buy your pictures or the best option would be to use pictures from your program of real mentors and real mentees doing real mentoring activities. If you don't have those, or if you don't have good pictures of those, then buy your pictures. And you want them to look like the people you're trying to recruit. You want them engaging activities that you want them to do. And you want them to be in some way, like you want them or it to show the benefits. So if they're having a good time, that's a benefit. And that would be a way of demonstrating that. So those are the types of pictures. You want to get them excited. So think about what would be exciting to you. What pictures would be interesting to you? Most of the time, it's people having fun and doing stuff. Okay. Next question. I heard a lot about who to target as mentors, but I was wondering about how they get people to mentor once they meet with them. Okay, so this is like you've at least got initial interest. So you've either had someone who is indicated to you through inquiry, they sent you an email, or you met them at an event, or something happened, but they've indicated that they could be interested in mentoring. Is that correct? For whoever wrote this question.
Yeah, that's what I think I wrote that one, or something close enough to that.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Okay, so the idea is first, you are a salesperson. Like that is an important thing. And I think it's important to realize too that salespeople are not slimy. The idea of selling doesn't mean that you're trying to con people into something or, won over them. Like we're selling a concept and an idea of an activity, an experience to them. And they need to understand what that looks like. So selling it to them is helping them to envision what it will look like and to visualize themselves in that role and to help to break down the barriers to that sale. And so these would be the alignment pieces, right? Helping them to see how it aligns with their lifestyle, how it aligns with who they are and their values, how it aligns with their goals. So selling it, follow up and ask, right? So we have to conduct follow-up. I can't tell you how many people are left on the table because we don't follow up properly, right? So we say we'll follow up with you and we don't, or we just expect that they're going to follow up with us. We say you follow up if you're interested, they never follow up, and we just leave it. So there has to be some form of follow-up. And making the direct ask of, I think you would be an excellent mentor. Is that something you'd be willing to consider? What will it take for you to become a mentor? Right? So making sure that you're following up and giving them the information that's needed. If they have specific things they're asking for, making sure you give that to them. And then the other piece is just really providing tailored customer service and professionalism. People want a professional experience from a volunteer opportunity. The programs that they tend to not sign up with are the ones that seem super haphazard. So if they contact you and you don't follow up with them for a week, they're going to be way less likely to become a mentor, not because their immediate needs aren't being met, which is what a lot of people think. People think it's the instant gratification piece. It's not. It's that they've now decided that you're not a legitimate organization. Because if you were, you would have been able to follow up with them more quickly, right? So that professionalism piece is really key and important. in all of this. Because if you set yourself as a legitimate business, they're going to be much more interested and much more willing to treat you as such as well. All right. What are realistic goals when it comes to recruiting for a small organization of 4 to 6 employees? So this one's really tough because there's so many different kind of factors that go into this. So if there were a dedicated position to recruitment, I think realistically, if a person is just doing recruitment, just volunteer mentor recruitment, nothing else, it can recruit about 100 people a year and place them in mentoring relationships. So you have to break that down to then the actual position. So if it's a quarter of your job, for instance, that would only be 25 people per year. So you have to take into account how many people are recruiting, what are the other roles, what are the other functions that they're doing, and then the other thing is where you're located. So I've seen people recruit as many, in a very well-structured, defined program where we had multiple people doing recruitment, recruit about 120 people a year. And this is not just recruiting potential people, this is like actual matched people. So that person could recruit like 200 people that they then narrow down to 120. But that's in a super refined process. If this is, again, if it's a quarter of what you do, or there are multiple people involved, you're looking at a lot less than that. I'd say, most people starting out, if it's your full-time position and you don't have infrastructure in place, I think realistically 50, if that's, most of what you're doing. But if you guys, do you have questions about, because the 4 to 6 employees, it is more based on the role of those people. And if there are, if they're all involved in recruitment. But I'd say most of the time recruitment goals are kind of arbitrary and are based on the youth that are that you're trying to match or some grant, instead of what is realistic based on the kind of scope of the roles and how recruitment has been defined within the organization. And that's why we see burnout and people who don't meet their goals. It's because it's not based on the recruiter, it's based on the youth and a grant. Okay, so the last question that I have was, what expectations can we hold our board members to when it comes to recruiting? So my first big throwaway answer is whatever you want. You can set whatever expectations you want for your board. It's just a matter of setting them and making it a part of their board membership, and a clear expectation, giving them the rationale of why and how they can be involved. Now, the reality of it, and what I'll say more realistically, is that some people are going to be better than others at this. So I think that the kind of like foundational expectation that I have for board members is that they will create access to the business where they work. They will open the door to that company, and they will be a steward of that relationship and the involvement of other people within the company. So it's not necessarily that they are doing the recruitment, it's they're setting you up with people within the company that will then help to do the recruitment. And this kind of, it varies as to what board members, what their roles are in companies. If they are heavy hitters and have influence within their company, that's a lot easier to do. If they are not, if they're, younger and not as influential in their company, this would be a little bit different, but it's still, across the board. My expectation for board members is that they are a steward of a relationship with their company, and they open their company to mentor recruitment opportunities, and they make it, a priority for their employees. And then the other expectation with this is that if they're doing that, we have to provide them with the materials to make the ask and to do so through their networks. So you have to prepare and support your board members. If we don't give them those tools, I think there is no ability to have an expectation that they would recruit, because then we're asking them to also develop the materials to know what to talk about. So we have to take the guesswork away for them. Well, that was the last question that I had from you guys. So I guess kind of considering what we've talked about with the super brief training that I did, and then these questions and anything else, do you guys have more questions or things that you'd like to talk about further in terms of all of this? Lingering things. No? Okay. Word of mouth is going to be your best recruitment tool for conversion. So while social media has kind of the allure of broader audience, and you can, post and have more people see it, and there's, if you send out an email, you can have 500 people on the email. So there's this idea of, kind of volume. Word of mouth recruitment is always going to be the most effective, because you have people who know people, and relationships are at the basis of everything. So if I am sending information to my friends and asking them to be a mentor, that's going to resonate with them more, because they value my opinion. I'm selecting them specifically. So anytime you can get a chance to actually talk to someone and communicate about mentoring, you're going to have a greater impact. It also, kind of relies then on the existing relationships, which is also hugely influential in helping people to actually convert to becoming a mentor. Okay. Does anybody want to talk about your project at this point, and kind of, what you've come up with, what you're thinking about for January? Anybody who is interested, you can kind of provide an overview, and we can troubleshoot and talk about feedback as well. No takers? Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like we had a project in mind that we all kind of brainstormed about on Friday, but now with all this new information, I feel like we kind of have to reshape it just a teeny bit.
Okay. That totally works. Do you want to talk through it at all, or you guys want to kind of work offline? The other thing is, as I said, I'm more than accessible. Caitlin has my contact information. If you guys want to email me after today or want to talk on the phone, I will be done with finals next Wednesday, and then I am cruising into my winter break. So I will have plenty of time to provide support as you guys are kind of working through this over the next couple weeks.
Well, that's awesome, and thank you. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Okay. Oh, here, I'm going to tap, yep. I'm going to type my email into here. Okay. And then here is my phone number. I'm a big texter too, so if you guys want to text, I can also communicate via text message. But I put my email address and my phone number into the chat box, so you guys have access to that. Okay. Well, that's all I've got for you. Anybody has any other questions, I guess feel free to email me or call me. Otherwise, that's it. I don't know. Caitlin, are you still on the line?
I am. Yeah, I think most of them are probably feeling like what Jordan said, that they had a lot of ideas, and this has just been really great content and feedback for them to take and kind of keep shaping up what they want their ultimate model to be that they're developing.
Okay, great. Well, I hope this was helpful and not overwhelming. I hope this just helps to refine things and doesn't completely, I guess, deter you from what you were doing. But it's just, yeah, I guess most of this is just about mindfulness and planning. So I have templates for things and that kind of stuff. So as you guys are going through, if you want to see anything, just shoot me an email. And if I have it, I will definitely provide it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. If there's not anything else, I guess we can wrap up.
Great.
Caitlin,
Thanks so much, Audrey. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. I hope you have a great day.
Yes, you too.
And again, I hope to hear from you guys as well. And if not, I will certainly circle back and see how things went in January.
Okay, that sounds good. We hope it goes well too.
Okay, sounds great. Caitlin, am I going to close this out, or are you guys still talking after this?
Nope, we're all set. So once you're done, you can just, when you hit your X, you'll be prompted, and there'll be a little thing that says end meeting for all, and that'll go ahead and log everybody out.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you at some point in the future.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.